What's up, guys? Welcome back to Classic Octane. I am Taylor. We are back on the KZ750 project, trying to get this thing wrapped up. Today we are going to cut off all the brackets we don't need from the frame. We need to make a bracket to hold the exhaust on that side, which I'll show you here in a second. Mount up our heat shield so we can hopefully cut down on the amount of calf burning we're going to be doing. And then if we have time, I want to mount up our new mini Speedo. Let's get to work. So we're going to start off by building a mount for the exhaust itself. This exhaust is already pretty darn sturdy. If you didn't watch the video of me making this, I'll throw a card up now for it. But we kind of wrapped it and we put it as close to the frame as we could, but it is still kind of out a little bit. So I'll talk about the kind of heat shield options we have here in a minute. But for the mount, we're actually just going to utilize this factory little bracket that's already got a threaded hole in it. And then the exhaust clamp here has this kind of threaded section underneath, so where it can actually clamp down. We're just going to utilize that same bolt. So we'll clamp the exhaust down. It'll give us maybe a 1/4 inch of threads left. We'll just build a little 90-degree bracket that comes straight down off of here and right to that bolt. And that'll give us a nice kind of central mounting point for the exhaust. I think we could get away without it, but since we do plan to do some off-roading, probably get this thing off the ground a few times, we want to make sure we're not going to lose that on the trail. For the exhaust heat shield, I've kind of run a couple of different options in my head, and I think the best one is going to be to kind of utilize maybe welding a stud, like a bolt off of the same exact clamp we just talked about. Drill a hole through this plate, and that way we can very tightly kind of bolt this heat shield basically right about there. We'll kind of position it how we want. I may flatten this thing out just a little bit. We'll kind of play with that here in a few minutes, but the idea here is that yes, we're going to give up a little bit of aesthetics, but ideally we're not going to be cooking our leg every time we ride the bike. So it's almost impossible for me to get a good angle to show you guys this whole thing at once, but what I think I decided to do, or at least the first attempt, is going to be to modify this rod that has like 2 eyelets at the end that I found in my metal scrap pile. Just because I think it would be cooler to have this than it would be to just have like a, you know, little 90-degree flat bar. Like, that's kind of boring. So this, you know, side will obviously mount into that threaded hole. This side will go up there. So all I'm going to do is measure it, cut it. We'll bevel each end, weld this together as one piece, and then that should work out pretty well. I've been in your waters. So here are the 2 little pieces. Obviously I still need to deburr them. The fit looks good. So what I'm going to do is just deburr and give them like a little chamfer on each end. That way when we go in there we can kind of weld up that little valley, and then when we grind it, ideally this will look like it was always kind of one piece. Brackets in place. You can see it turned out pretty well. Just put a little 10 mil nut on the bottom and a 10 mil bolt on the top. So once that's painted the same color as the chassis, it should hopefully you know, hide pretty well. So let's go ahead and move on to figuring out exactly where we want to mount our stud off of here for the heat shield. So I just jumped up on the bike to make sure we're kind of putting this thing in the right place. And basically when you're sitting on the bike, your calf is roughly just behind these springs. So I think if we take our, you know, bolt, we weld it on the very edge of this, and we put this on, it's going to give us a decent amount of coverage. And I'm hoping with, you know, the separation between this, through the clamp, through the bolt, then into this piece, all the way across, will hopefully not have a huge amount of heat transfer. Otherwise this thing's going to get super hot and it's going to kind of defeat the purpose. But I think this is definitely going to be better than nothing. So we're going to continue on this path and kind of weld that piece on, see how she looks. So with everything in place, the exhaust is super sturdy now. I mean, I can shake the whole bike from the back of the muffler, I can shake the whole bike from the front, kind of technically not mounted section of the heat shield. So our mount is definitely doing what it's supposed to do. The heat shield, to be determined if it's going to do what it's supposed to do, but it's definitely going to be better than not having one. I think the next thing I'm going to do now is start to go through and cut off all these little brackets that we don't need. So the kind of side of this one we used for the exhaust mount, that can be trimmed off. This one's totally not needed. This one's not needed. Both of these on the swing arm that used to have the chain guard, we're not going to run with those either. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'll probably just throw you guys in a time lapse, grab the saw, and just start trimming all this stuff off. Finally done with all the grinding and sanding and everything. It turned out really well. So the idea here is we don't have to get the metal perfect. Even like the factory kind of mounts and a lot of the factory welds and everything don't look great on a lot of these kind of 70s Japanese bikes. So the idea here is that we paint this all black and you just won't be able to immediately tell where a bracket used to be. But again, we're not going for a perfect quality show bike here, because then we'd be grinding down factory welds and we're not trying to go get that crazy. So, well, that's going to be it for this video, guys. I don't need to look in the mirror to know that I'm probably looking pretty rough, but that's a sign of a productive day in the shop. So now that all this is cut off and ground smooth, we can paint it. But before paint, it probably makes sense for us to figure out our rear fender, because we're going to need to figure out how we're going to mount it and even the overall design. So I'll probably jump into that next video. I do need to go pick up some more argon for the TIG welder before we can start fabricating some more pieces. Once this whole back half is done, that's when we'll move on to the front. A little bit of fabrication to do up here, but it's mostly just cosmetic stuff. We are kind of on the home stretch. I think it's going to be maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 more videos, something like that, before we're completely done. So I know you guys are still waiting to hear my kind of big announcement. I'm probably just going to make a video specifically about that in the next couple of days, so be on the lookout for that, and I'll see you guys in the next video.